I haven't mentioned this until now, but my first book story was written based on my own experiences. The audience murmured in shock at this sudden confession. What? My parents, confused by the situation, were startled by the audience's reaction. I intend to ensure they never lift their heads to walk outside again. Dressed in a pure white wedding gown, I made my first and last challenge against my parents who had betrayed me. My name is Violet Howard. I am 30 years old. A life full of ups and downs and complex turns, that's the perfect way to describe it. I have a brother named Barton, who is 3 years older than me. Since childhood, with his fair skin, large eyes, and rosy cheeks, my parents would proudly show him off as if he were an angel. Even as he grew, he retained his beauty, excelled in his studies, and had such a kind personality that he was always the center of attention. In contrast, I was born large, with small eyes, and was often mistaken for a boy. I was deeply hurt when I overheard my parents laughing about how I wasn't the angelic baby they had hoped for, but instead, they were disappointed by how ugly I was. I was constantly compared to my older brother, both in appearance and performance, only having my faults and failures pointed out, never receiving any praise. Over time, I was tasked with most of the household chores, and my clumsiness would only anger my mother, who did nothing but scold me. My father, often away on business trips, showed little interest in me even when he was home, simply following my mother's orders without ever standing up for me. Although he didn't express anger like my mother, he never initiated conversation and treated me as if I didn't exist. When the family went out, they would leave me behind, saying things like, "Your test scores haven't been good, so stay home and study, or there's laundry piling up, so stay and do it." My brother, tall and slender with a refined face, was clearly different from me, as I was chubby and short. Covering my face with long bangs and walking with a stoop, I felt like an embarrassment for my parents to be seen with in public. Barton was the only one who was kind to me, realizing early on that our parents' treatment towards me was wrong, and he protected me, but that did not improve how I was treated within the family. When Barton was preparing for the entrance exam of a prestigious private middle school, my mother ordered me to vacate my room as my presence was a disturbance to his studies. "How will you take responsibility if Barton fails his exams? He is studying to become a doctor, and you must support his dream," my mother said, instructing my father to move my belongings to a storage space under the stairs. My parents occupied the living room, and I had no choice but to stay in that cramped space. I endured, thinking I could return to my room once Barton finished his middle school exams. However, even after Barton passed, I was not allowed back in my room on the pretext that I would disturb his daily studies, and I ended up living permanently in the storeroom. By the time I was in my final year of middle school, my family was planning a move. They planned to relocate near the university Barton hoped to attend, though he hadn't yet been accepted. "Will I have my own room after we move?" I couldn't help but ask my mother one day. To my surprise, she responded cheerfully with an unexpected answer. "It will be tough to commute to middle school from the new house, right? So you should live with your grandmother. Everything is already arranged." What I was shocked, yet it was somewhat expected. With a successful son like Barton, my parents seemed to need nothing else. I always felt like an excess presence in the family, one that might be let go of someday. "Can I live with you again after I graduate from middle school?" I asked with a glimmer of hope, but my mother coldly replied, "No, your grandfather can't move now, and it's too hard for your grandmother to care for him alone. She's getting old, so you should help her," she said. If that was the case, why couldn't my mother take care of her own parents? Knowing that voicing my thoughts would only provoke anger, I had no choice but to keep silent. "So, there's no need for you to go to high school. Caring will keep you busy. And with your abilities, it will be hard for you to find a good job, even if you graduate." My mother actually said this to me. Although it was different from the prestigious school my brother attended, I had been diligently studying for the entrance exam of the school I had chosen. I used the cramped storeroom as my room, turning a cardboard box into a desk, studying late into the night. "Since your brother will be going to medical school, we will need more money. Once you graduate from middle school, you should work and contribute financially to the household. We raised you after all, so it's only natural," my mother stated. Being asked to leave home to provide care and contribute to the household finances was so unreasonable that it left my mind in turmoil. As I held back tears and remained silent, my mother sighed and said, "You really are gloomy. I dislike that damp disposition of yours. Why can't you be more like your brother?" Not speaking also seemed to anger my mother. I was constantly compared to my brother and felt a disappointment to her. I felt, as I always had, that there was no place for me in this house. I realized that going to my grandmother's house was the only option left for me. On the day before the family was to move, I decided to go to my grandmother's house. There was a conflict within the family when my brother tried to stop me, but I left the house as if fleeing from the situation. Carrying a few belongings, I took several trains to reach my grandparents' home. As a child, I used to visit frequently with my brother, but since middle school, my grandfather had become bedridden, and my mother had forbidden me from visiting. My grandfather was a bit stern but a quiet man, and I felt at peace in his calm presence. My grandmother was extremely kind, unbothered by small matters, and had a warm heart that accepted everything. Both of them showed equal affection towards us grandchildren, and their home had always felt like a safe haven for me. Upon my arrival, my grandmother was already waiting for me at the entrance. Despite some anxiety about our long-awaited reunion, she immediately burst into tears of emotion and hugged me upon seeing me. "I'm sorry. I've told her many times, but your mother has always been stubborn and won't listen. It's unforgivable for a parent to drive out their own child," my grandmother explained. Her words conveyed her numerous attempts to reason with my mother about this issue. But expecting more from parents who showed no interest in me was pointless. They were willing to sacrifice me for my brother's tuition and to support the household financially. Being with people who could show love was surely a way to a happier life. I decided to cut ties with my parents and stay at my grandmother's house until I graduated from high school. I was also prepared to care for my grandfather, but he passed away shortly after I moved in following a rapid decline in his health. Initially overwhelmed with grief, my grandmother said, "Having you here has saved me," and gradually began to smile again. Together we cooked, shopped, and shared laughs over daily occurrences, finally experiencing the warm, family-like moments I had longed for. As life settled and I found some peace of mind, I began to take care of my appearance, exploring makeup and hairstyles. My once chubby physique slimmed down as I grew, and I attained a slender figure like my brother. With my improved appearance, I said goodbye to my middle school self, made new friends, and enjoyed a fun high school life. Though I worked part-time to avoid burdening my grandmother, my mother occasionally called demanding money. Thanks to my grandmother standing firm, those demands eventually stopped, but I couldn't forgive my mother's actions. When I graduated from high school, my grandmother handed me a bank book, saying, "This is what you've earned, so use it for your future." Thanks to her saving my earnings from part-time jobs, I had the opportunity to consider a broader perspective for my future. After that, I planned to move to New York, desiring a typical urban life while testing my capabilities. Above all, I wanted to earn enough to express my gratitude to my grandmother. When I told her about my plans to move to New York, she smiled and agreed wholeheartedly. As she hugged me with her frail hands, my grandmother said, "It'll be lonely, but your independence is for your own good. You are a strong and kind-hearted grandchild, and I will support you no matter where you are. If you ever have any trouble, contact me immediately, and I will come to you." "Grandma, thank you so much. I'll do my best." With the warmth of family and unconditional love my grandmother taught me, I vowed to become a respectable adult and repay her kindness. 8 years have passed since then. Now, I live a busy but fulfilling life as a young, notable novelist. Initially, when I moved to New York, I worked a clerical job at a small company while writing novels as a hobby. Writing had become a daily routine for me, a way to escape to different worlds since I didn't have a place at home. I repeatedly edited what I considered my best manuscript and mustered the courage to submit it to a Newcomer's Literary Award. Winning the grand prize led to my debut as an author. Since then, with a bit of luck and a lot of support from others, I have consistently produced hit works. I thought living solely for my work wasn't bad, but then I met someone special in my life. After a year of dating a partner I met through a friend, we decided to get married. I had been skeptical about marriage due to my harsh family background, but his kindness and understanding of my past encouraged my decision. My life was full, both professionally and personally, and just as I was about to start anew and try to forget the bitter memories of my childhood, my mother suddenly appeared. "Violet, oh, how beautiful you've become," she exclaimed. It happened just as I stepped out of the entrance of the condo I live in, a sudden encounter after 8 years. It felt as if a stranger had bumped into me. My mother was like someone I was meeting for the first time. She hugged me tightly and began to talk tearfully with exaggerated gestures. "It's been so long. I just had to see you. I got your address from Grandma. I'm so happy to see how wonderfully you've grown," she said. I felt uncomfortable with her demeanor, and my skin crawled at her touch. "I had heard from Barton that you became a writer, but I had no idea you were successful enough to live in such a fabulous condo. You must be doing quite well. How much are you earning?" Her sudden reappearance and probing questions only highlighted her unchanged nature, raising the old discomfort and suspicions about her intentions. Seeing my mother immediately start a conversation about money during our long overdue reunion reminded me that she hasn't changed a bit. The reason I used a pen name was because I didn't want to share the same last name as my parents. And you're getting married, right? I heard it's to a doctor. Really impressive. I'd love to hear more about him, my mother said. It was the first time I heard praise from her, but it was only about my fiance's profession. Barton already has his own family and says he can't spare more money for us. After all the money we spent to help him become a doctor, he only thinks about his own family. Such an ungrateful person. But you don't have children yet, and you must have some financial leeway, right? Ever since Barton stopped helping, we've been struggling. It's only natural to have one's own family. It's unreasonable for my brother to ignore his own life and continue supporting our parents. I knew from my grandmother that my grandparents had actually provided substantial help for my brother's education. Seeing my self-centered mother brought back bitter childhood memories. And then I thought, now that I'm an adult, I feel the perfect timing for revenge on these toxic parents has arrived. I intend to inflict a thorough social punishment on them, ensuring they never dare show up before me again. Well, but I can't decide on financial matters alone. I'll have to discuss it with my husband, I said. Oh, thank you. You really are my sweet child, my mother exclaimed happily. Seeing her trying to ingratiate herself, I forced a smile while suppressing my disgust, and continued the conversation. Actually, my wedding is next week. My grandmother was supposed to attend in place of my parents, but I really want you to come too. I'll introduce you to my new family. Oh, is that so? You shouldn't call your grandmother for our role. We should properly play our role as parents, my mother said. It was hard to endure my mother's words belittling my beloved grandmother, but it was the time for me to be patient. The following week, this person would no longer be able to act superior, nor would she be able to walk outside with her head held high. My grandmother was surprised when I told her that my mother had visited and what she had talked about. She was upset because she had not given my mother the address. Indeed, it had been so long since we'd been in contact, so her sudden visit was suspicious. She must have sneaked a look at your contact information, she deduced angrily. As we discussed the special plans for the wedding, my grandmother eagerly agreed and was happy to support my proposals. On the day of the ceremony, both my father and mother appeared at the venue. Meeting my father again after such a long time didn't evoke any special feelings. I merely noted that they had aged. They seemed uninterested in me and had come merely following my mother's lead, unchanged and predictable as ever. I had previously introduced them to my husband and in-laws. Since my husband and in-laws only knew that I had been out of touch with my parents, they were surprised by their appearance but welcomed them. At the venue, we hastily set up a specific table for my parents. Instead of the usual round tables, a rectangular table usually used at the reception was placed at the very front center. It was decorated with a white tablecloth but was clearly makeshift, equipped with ordinary folding chairs. This seating arrangement was something I had specifically requested to be made, and it attracted a lot of attention. Unfortunately, I was still getting ready at the time and didn't see their initial reactions, but my grandmother filled me in later. Ah, my mother exclaimed in surprise. What's the meaning of this? Why are we the only ones at such an embarrassing table? She complained to the venue staff. My grandmother tried to soothe her. It was a last-minute change, so it was unavoidable. Eventually, my parents were seated in the best seats at the front and center of the stage. People around them looked on curiously, but my vain mother mistook their gazes for envy and quickly adjusted her attitude, declaring, "Well, I'll endure it and sit here." My father showed no particular interest and immediately reached for a drink as soon as he sat down. For my shameless parents, even a poorly spotlighted seat seemed to pose no issue. The ceremony proceeded smoothly. Seeing my grandmother tear up and beam with joy at my appearance in the wedding dress made the whole event feel profoundly meaningful. During the highlight of the ceremony, when I read the letter of thanks to my grandmother, my mother initially objected to me reading it in front of the guests. However, I assured her, "There will be a time at the end for you and Dad to be introduced, so please listen carefully until then," convincing her to stay seated. While I read the letter, my parents showed no emotion and sat looking bored. There seemed to be no sense of reflection on their part about the hardships their child endured because of them. But that was fine. If they were indifferent, I would not hold back. I was no longer the little child who could do nothing but cry. As a final point, let me introduce my parents, I said, raising my eyes from the letter to ensure they were looking, then nodded for them to come forward. As my parents eagerly stood and walked towards me, I continued speaking. What I have not disclosed until now is that my debut novel was inspired by real-life experiences. At that moment, the venue erupted into murmurs. What? My parents seemed confused by the reaction of the crowd. The debut novel. which won a Newcomer's Award and became a bestseller, had made me a well-known young author. However, my disinterested parents seemed to not even understand the contents of that book. As those who have read my book might know, the protagonist is mistreated by their parents from a young age and ultimately abandoned. I, too, was constantly told I was inferior compared to my brother and grew up being negated in everything. Whenever the family went out, I was always left behind to take care of the house, I explained. But in my 3rd year of middle school, I was discarded by my parents and told to live with my grandmother. I was forced not just to forego high school, but to work and help support their household while caring for my grandfather. Gasps of surprise rose from the venue. It's unbelievable. After treating their own daughter like that, how can they show their faces at her wedding where the criticisms heard around? These revelations not only served to expose the truth, but also to finally hold my parents accountable in the eyes of those who had once known us as a family. Such a thing was true. Truly appalling murmurs of astonishment echoed through the room. My mother attempted a rebuttal. "Violet, don't say it like that. We just asked Grandma to help out a little with raising you." Just help out? At 15, I was driven out of the house with no support for living or education expenses. What you did was simply offload your responsibilities onto Grandma. That's unforgivable, both as a parent and as a daughter, I countered sharply. My mother, lost for words, fell silent. Just like the protagonist in my book, I too faced hardships. I didn't break down because I always had Grandma who supported and loved me. My gratitude for her is what got me through. Now, coming to me for money after all this time, I will no longer call you my parents from this point on. Please disappear from my life. With that, I made a firm declaration to my parents and poured out all my feelings, resounding through the venue. Among the audience were journalists from newspapers and magazines connected to us. Seizing the opportunity, I asked them to write about today's events and to broadcast it widely to the public. I've held back from making this public before, but now I feel it's important to expose such toxic parents to prevent other children from suffering the same fate. Also, I want to convey a message that no matter how harsh the environment, there are always people around who will support you, and that never giving up can open new paths. My call received a round of substantial applause from the audience. Camera shutters clicked as the reporters began taking pictures of my parents. Stop it. Don't take pictures, my parents panicked, covering their faces with their arms. Barton, help. Everyone is misunderstanding us as bad parents. Tell them properly. Tell them we're the parents who supported you all the way through medical school. My mother cried out. That's right, we paid high tuition fees thinking of your welfare. Tell everyone that, my father added. Even at this point, they continued to deny their faults and struggled futilely. In response, my brother, who had remained silent until now, finally exploded in anger. Enough. Be quiet, he shouted across the hall, reprimanding our parents. His forceful intervention silenced them, marking a definitive end to their attempts to sway public opinion in their favor at the wedding. The narrative of my story, underpinned by their response, stood vindicated in the eyes of all present. With a sudden scream, my mother collapsed to the floor in shock. My father stood frozen, his mouth agape in astonishment. Seeing my usually calm and gentle brother raise his voice and yell was a sight that surprised not only our parents but everyone around. Graduated me from medical school? Your true intent was to have me earn as a doctor. I had different dreams, but you dismissed them as unprofitable and forced the path of a doctor on me. Day in and day out, you pressured me, saying we're even going into debt for this and your sister is enduring for your sake, only adding to my suffering as a child. My brother revealed. His confession shocked me. He too had been struggling alone under our parents' pressure. When Violet was kicked out, I truly wanted to go with her and escape to Grandma's. I was worried about Violet and wanted to leave the house too, but Grandma stopped me, saying, "Don't abandon your situation for your parents. Do it for your own future." That was the first time both our parents and I had heard this. I had no idea my brother had been carrying such feelings all this time. At first, I was forced into it, but eventually, I came to want to help people as a doctor. Grandma saw that in me and advised me to use even the worst parents to realize my dreams, telling me Violet will be okay without her belief in me. I would have run away instead of becoming a doctor. Now that you can't extract money from me and are even trying to profit from the daughter you discarded, it's clear there is a problem with you as human beings. I want to make it clear at this point, I am severing ties with you, so please never show yourselves to us again, my brother declared firmly. Overwhelmed by his resolute stance, our parents were left speechless. As cameras began to click once more, they panicked and started running towards the venue's exit. Their fleeing figures were also captured on camera. My brother and I exchanged a look and nodded at each other. We are adults now. No longer will we allow ourselves to be manipulated by such toxic parents. I'm sorry things turned out this way. I apologized to my husband, who had quietly observed everything. He smiled kindly in return. I am truly grateful for his acceptance and support of the plan. If it means you are freed from your past, then it's all worth it, Violet. And your brother was impressive too. He encouraged me. My husband, 7 years older than me, has always been a pillar of support, offering the words I needed. Thank you. I expressed my gratitude. 8 years since leaving home, I had overcome many challenges and finally built a family and home with someone I truly cherish. I am deeply grateful for this happiness. 7 years after the wedding turmoil. Now at 30, I am blessed with a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. My husband, a doctor, used to have a hectic schedule but left his position at the university hospital to take over his family's clinic. This change has given him more time to spend with us. Recently, we enjoyed a family vacation with my grandmother and hosted a Christmas party with my brother's family. Celebrating Christmas together, we deepened our familial bonds in ways I couldn't have imagined in the past. It brought me immense happiness. As for my parents, the incident at the wedding attracted more attention than expected, and the backlash they received was severe. Initially insisting they were blameless, the cold stares and criticism from relatives, friends, and neighbors eventually led them to reduce their public activities. They significantly damaged their social credibility and, finding it very difficult to continue their former lifestyle, decided to move to a remote rural area where nobody knew them. In this new place, they managed with day labor while slowly depleting their modest savings, trying to live as inconspicuously as possible. However, their nature hasn't changed, and their conversations often include bragging, clearly taking pride in their urban origins, which makes it hard for them to fit in with the local community. I heard about their situation from a trusted journalist friend, and many now know of them as my toxic parents who stirred public uproar. I am convinced that cutting ties with them was a wise decision, achieving my goals of ensuring they could not raise their heads to go outside and never appear before me again especially brought me a great sense of relief. Meanwhile, the unexpected turn of events at the wedding not only made headlines but also brought renewed attention to my debut novel, leading to an unexpected and exciting opportunity for it to be adapted into a drama. Though I wasn't fortunate with my parents, I am blessed with a wonderful brother and a loving grandmother. Now I am building a happy family life with my loving spouse, surrounded by our delightful children. I couldn't ask for more happiness than this. Tomorrow is Grandma's birthday, so let's make lots of special dishes, I called out to the children playing in the yard, and they all cheered in joy. At that moment, their bright, shining smiles and hearty laughter warmed my heart further, deepening my love and appreciation for my family. My name is Erica and I live with my parents. It's been 2 years since I let go of managing my own company, and now I focus on investments as my main business activity, which is going smoothly, so I don't face any financial difficulties. As I approach my 30s, some might worry about me not being married yet, but I have my own dreams, and being able to repay my parents is enough for me. I'm not fixated on the idea of marriage, and because I'm financially stable, I feel no rush to get married. There are various opinions about whether my views are correct, but at least for now, I am living a comfortable life. How about we all go on a trip this weekend? I'm thinking a spa would be nice. That sounds good. I was just discussing with Dad about going somewhere to celebrate our 30th anniversary. That's perfect then. Looking forward to it. I have an older sister who is 3 years older than me, and our parents raised us with care. I didn't go to university because I had my own dreams, but my sister attended a private university. Our parents always prioritized us over themselves and provided us with a lot of financial support. So we want to reciprocate by giving back to them as much as we can. Living in the same house with our parents makes it easier to plan eating out or traveling, and they are happy living with me. It would be nice if your sister could come on the spa trip too. Yes, that's true. I haven't heard back from her recently though, so I have no idea what she's doing. Hopefully our schedules can align. Is that so? That's worrying. I can't even tell if she's checking her emails. It's been 3 years now. Although I live with my parents, my sister has not shown her face or called since she left home. She repeated a year twice at university and was a financial burden on our parents. From that time, we started arguing frequently and eventually stopped talking. I moved to LA to pursue my dreams, but my sister lived at home for several more years. 3 years ago, she got married and has neither visited home nor called since then. It's crazy that she didn't come to greet us when she got married, and even though we want to greet her in-laws and meet them, we can't contact her. What is she thinking? No news is good news, as they say. If she doesn't come home, it means she's managing somehow. Well, as a parent, I think she could at least call, though. Dad, like Mom, is optimistic and has a soft spot for his daughter, but I decided it's not my place to comment. Since my sister is not currently a financial burden on our parents, I guess that's okay. My parents seem to want to rebuild a good family relationship like in the past, and I hope that will happen eventually, but as long as they are healthy, that's enough for me. A year passed in such days. Mom, Dad, let's head out now. Now? Did we have any plans today? There's something I want you both to see. Urging them along, I led my parents to a place. It was a high-end residential area in the city center with impressive homes lining the streets. It was my parents' first time in such a place, and they looked around nervously, but I stopped in front of a luxurious house. Isn't this house wonderful? It looks nice. What about this house? This house is mine. How about we live here together? My sudden proposal confused my parents, but I was serious. I had finally managed to purchase this house 6 months ago and was in a position to move then. The house I acquired was a 7-room luxurious house. It might not be necessary to have such a large house, but since my parents had always dreamed of living in a big house one day, I was happy to make that dream come true. Are you serious? It's like a dream? I can't believe you bought such a house. I wanted to make you happy. Fulfilling your dream makes me happy too. When I told them this, my parents looked at each other, surprised but smiling happily. I know that giving back to one's parents isn't just about giving presents or spending money. Still, I was thrilled to fulfill their longtime dream, and I strongly wish for them to spend even happier days in their old age. 3 years have passed since we started living in this house together, and my investment business is still doing well. Tonight, I thought we'd go out for some delicious steak. The reservation time was approaching, and I was getting ready to leave the house when suddenly the doorbell rang. Wondering why the doorbell would ring at this hour, I checked the camera. Isn't that Erica? It's me, your sister. Let me in. I hadn't told my sister about buying this house since we had been estranged for many years. So I was surprised when she suddenly showed up, but I decided to let her into the house for the meantime. It seemed our parents hadn't contacted her, so how did she find out about us? It's been a while. I was surprised because there was no contact. I couldn't tell you about moving because we couldn't contact you. How did you? I can't believe you all moved without consulting me, even if you couldn't contact me. I'm family too. That's true? But I almost blamed my sister for her self-centered behavior and for leaving home on her own. But doing that would be a waste of time. My sister has a quick temper and can become violent when angry. I had no idea why she came here after all this time. Anyway, I should avoid causing any trouble. With that thought, I carefully asked my sister how she found out about this house without sounding too harsh. Who told you we moved? Since we went to the same high school, I know a lot of your friends, and I can easily hear about your situation. Really? Although we attended the same high school, I can't imagine she's still in touch with my friends. Besides, I barely keep in contact with my high school friends, and above all, I haven't told them about the move. I thought she knew I started a business and understood that it was doing well. Maybe she found out on her own and decided to visit. But if she says it's from friends, maybe it's better not to dig deeper right now. Anyway, it turned out that our family of 4 would be gathering after a long time. You used to tell me how much better it was to be independent, and now you're living off our parents. What are you talking about? Living in such a big house together, you must be contributing some money, right? Well, actually, contribute money? Maybe she doesn't know the details? She seems to think our parents bought this house, but they couldn't possibly afford it. My sister went to a private university and even had her study abroad paid for. Does she realize how much money our parents have spent on her? It's astonishing that she can say such things without thinking. If she really believes that, it's incredibly naive. I bought this house with my own money. Stop joking. I heard you gave up your company. She scoffed. I didn't give it up, I transferred the business. I'm now earning through investment ventures. You say that, but you basically couldn't manage the company and let it go bankrupt, right? There's no use hiding it. I'm sure that's what happened, knowing you. Her condescending attitude hasn't changed despite the years. I sense that our parents were happy about her unexpected return, but they were actually uncomfortable with her arrogant behavior and lack of prior communication. They didn't say it out loud, but their expressions stiffened, and their smiles from earlier had vanished. It's a natural reaction, and thinking about why she would visit at this hour to have such a conversation sends shivers down my spine. Then, the next thing my sister said shocked us all. I've decided to live here with my husband. Hope that's okay with you. What, suddenly? Does she think I would just accept this? After her haughty attitude just moments ago, what kind of nerve does she have? I'd appreciate it if she toned down the jokes. Even if there are spare rooms in this house, isn't this too presumptuous? You didn't even come to greet us when you got married, and now you drop this bombshell. I'm family too, right? And soon I'll have a child. You might not understand since you have no plans to marry, but showing our parents their grandchild is also a way of honoring them. You're having a baby. Our parents, who had been somber, perked up at the mention of a grandchild. When we go shopping at department stores, they often comment on how cute small children are. I haven't said anything because I'm single, but I know deep down they want grandchildren. Perhaps that's why, even though my sister has been unreasonable towards them, the instant they heard about the grandchild, all was forgiven. Are you really pregnant? How far along are you? Your stomach doesn't look that noticeable yet. I only found out about the pregnancy recently. That's why my body hasn't changed much yet. I'm planning to move soon to get support for the birth, so please help. After saying that, my sister left abruptly. It's astounding how self-centered she can be. Despite her past behavior, it seems she doesn't care. Clearly, my parents' reactions have only encouraged her attitude further. I don't feel like complaining to them. I can't show them a grandchild as a single person, and it's natural to share their happiness about her words. But living together in this house is something I definitely want to avoid. What should I do? What do you think about what she said earlier? We're happy about the baby. After living so selfishly, she's going to be a mother. Maybe she'll start to understand how we feel. My parents didn't say anything about living with my sister, but they seemed genuinely happy about her pregnancy. That's natural for any parent, and there's nothing surprising about it. For them, the joy of having a grandchild probably outweighs any past grievances with my sister. I can't easily forgive her selfishness, and I think she should apologize first, but I want to prioritize my parents' feelings. What do you think about living together with her family? It's her first pregnancy, so I want to help if I can. But if you're against it, I think it's okay to refuse. I understand why you'd be frustrated by her attitude. I deeply understand how you feel. I felt very reassured by my parents' words. Maybe subconsciously, I've been weighing myself against my sister. Despite all the ways I've tried to repay my parents, I was worried that they might prioritize my sister simply because she is pregnant. However, I was relieved to find out that they prioritized my feelings above all. Thank you. Let's make it just for a limited time until she has the baby and settles down. Ideally, I wanted to set clear boundaries, but I decided to welcome my sister for my parents' sake. My parents conveyed this decision to my sister, and she and her husband moved in right away. I had never met her husband before, and they hadn't even come to greet me when they got married. They haven't said anything to me since they started living here. I wasn't particularly looking forward to this, and a week passed with me trying to ignore it. Aren't you going to live on your own? Why all of a sudden? I just bought this house. Can you clear out your study? We want to make it our bedroom. Who does she think she is? Why should I have to leave when I bought this house? There are 7 rooms in the house, 3 of which are used as my parents' bedroom and their hobby rooms. I have 2 rooms for myself, a bedroom and a study. The remaining 2 are currently used as storage for various items. I had given up my bedroom for my sister to use, but it seems her greed has grown. Why do you think you can say such selfish things? It's my house, you know? If I lose my study, I won't have any personal space. So what? That doesn't matter to me. You should stop relying on our parents and live on your own. It's not good to be so dependent on your parents after you're 30. I was upset not only with my sister but also with her husband for saying such things. It seems they don't understand that this house is in my name. They must think that I, who have supposedly run my company into the ground, couldn't possibly afford such a luxurious house. My sister and her husband have been here a while now, and we haven't had much time to talk because I've been busy with investments. I thought there was no need to clarify, but I've reached my limit with my sister's attitude. I think I've said this before, but I bought this house, so please stop making unreasonable demands. That's a lie, obviously. Even I can tell that. You must have made our parents buy it, she said, and went back to her room with her husband. They seem to have no awareness that they are living in someone else's house. But thinking about it more won't improve the situation. I'm also busy with meetings for new investment opportunities, and I don't have time to deal with my sister and her husband. I quickly got ready to go out and headed to the cafe where I had arranged to meet. It was just the right timing, and after about 2 hours of meeting, I returned home. When I arrived and was about to step inside, I saw something unbelievable. What is this? Don't make such a loud noise at this hour. My belongings are thrown out in the yard, and there's even a tent set up. What are you trying to do? Incredibly, all the important documents and items from my study had been thrown out into the yard, and they had even set up a tent. This must mean they want me to leave the house, but it's utterly ridiculous. Unfortunately, my parents were also out, and no one was there to stop my sister and her husband. However, I've had enough of being disrespected like this. I don't know what you're trying to do, but enough is enough. I told you we're making your study our bedroom. You're old enough, you should move out and be independent. People who always rely on their parents should move out and become independent. They said this to me, laughing. I was about to explode with anger, but I knew that if I lashed out, I would be the bad guy. I desperately controlled my rising anger and silently began picking up my belongings from the yard. By the way, your parents are on a spa trip. They won't be back until the day after tomorrow. Enjoy your time in the tent. Ignoring their words, I silently gathered my things and left the house. I went to a hotel and checked in. When I looked at my phone, I saw missed calls from my parents. It seems they were given travel vouchers by my sister and her husband. This was all my sister and her husband's plan. They wanted to kick me out of the house while my parents were away. I can no longer tolerate this. After all their condescending behavior, I cannot forgive them. I'm determined to make them realize their rudeness. With that resolve, I called my parents. Sorry for calling so late. Can we talk for a bit? We're sorry for contacting you late too. The tickets were for today, so we hurried out without much time. My parents sounded happy about their sudden spa trip, but I had no room to consider their feelings. I didn't want to ruin their enjoyable trip, but I decided to speak up. I'm sorry to bother you during your trip, but can you look at the photos I'm about to send? Just a moment. What are these photos? They look like our yard. Who would do such a thing? After you left, they threw all the stuff from my study into the yard. I told them everything about what had just happened. My parents were shocked and speechless for a moment, but that was understandable. For them, it must seem like she's become a part of the family again, They remember the things my sister did in the past, but the fact that she's having a baby and managed to send them on a spa trip overshadows those memories. Just like mistaking a delinquent youth helping an elderly person as being genuinely good, people with generally negative impressions can dramatically change their image with just a little good behavior. However, we must accept reality as it is. I've reached my limit. I thought I could endure it until she gives birth, but I can't anymore. For now, we'll talk to her. Where are you staying, Erica? I've decided to stay at a nearby hotel. Okay. Rest well today. We'll be in touch. It wasn't clear whether my parents were on my side or my sister's, but for now I decided to leave the persuasion to them. Depending on their actions, I will think about my future steps. With these thoughts, I spent about 3 days at the hotel. Then a month passed. I'm back. What's going on? Why suddenly? My sudden return seemed to surprise them, but that was a natural reaction. A month had passed since my sister threw my belongings out, and I had been staying at a hotel. Apparently, my sister and her husband had assumed I had completely left. But there was no way I would leave my house without saying anything. I came back specifically to have an important discussion. I'm planning to sell the house, so pack your things and leave immediately. Are you joking? That's harsh. Have living outside for a month made you lose your mind? My sister and her husband continued to belittle me until the end. But their naive comments could only last for so long. They smiled unknowingly about what was awaiting them in the next few minutes, as I continued sharply. As proof, I brought the deed to the house. Now you see that this house I bought isn't a lie, right? While saying this, I presented them with the land title and other documents. They looked at each other with surprised faces, but that wasn't all. Do they think I just wasted time this past month without taking any action? If so, they are underestimating me too much. I'll say it again. I plan to sell this house. So please pack your things and leave soon. Coming back suddenly and talking about selling the house is unreasonable. You just bought it, right? Why sell it now? I didn't plan to sell it, but since you two keep making selfish demands, I thought maybe if I put it up for sale, you would leave. Who's being selfish? It's impossible to just leave immediately. They seemed very panicked once they realized I was serious, but it was too late to be flustered now. They should deeply regret their previous actions. They became silent after my words. As I was about to return to my hotel, my parents came back. Suddenly, my sister ran to my mother, acting as if she had been bullied. Mom, listen. Erica suddenly came home and said she's selling the house and that we have to leave. Do something. Yes, it seems she's gone crazy from living outside. Don't you think, Father? We were planning to leave by next week anyway. Eh? Naturally, I had already discussed this with my parents and had their agreement. Therefore, they weren't surprised at all. Instead, they looked at my sister and her husband with a cold gaze. They must have thought they could convince my parents to side with them, but it was futile. You knew about this. Erica told us the day she gave us the spa trip. We've heard everything about what you two did. Erica is as important to us as you are, and you've gone too far this time. When we returned from the trip and heard about Erica, we were appalled by all the lies. We wanted you to leave immediately, but Erica asked us to wait, so we kept quiet and endured. Hearing my parents' words, my sister and her husband seemed to realize they were in a difficult position and became awkward. Still, there was no sign of an apology from them. How twisted can their personalities be? It's truly beyond saving. Where can we live after leaving the house? She's pregnant, and it's a tough time ahead. Instead of worrying about your future, why not apologize for your past actions? They showed no remorse for their actions and expected concerns for their future. If they understood the situation, the first thing they should do is apologize. Not understanding even that. It's hard to believe this is my sister. I briefly wondered if all the good traits from our parents had passed to me and none to her, but then I was sure of it. In the end, they never apologized to me. You're the ones who should be apologizing. Telling us to pack up and leave when I'm about to give birth is crazy. That's right. The selfish one is you. Don't you understand yet? Why are you acting so high and mighty in a house that isn't even yours? If you don't like it, before complaining, why don't you just leave? You could never afford to live in such a luxurious house anyway. Who's really being spoiled here? We know you've quit your job. Since that incident, I've been kept informed about my sister and her husband's situation by my parents, so I know everything. It seems my sister had been a homemaker since getting married, but upon becoming pregnant, she intended to live here forever without thinking about us. It seems her husband had also quit his job. Perhaps they thought living in such a luxurious house would mean they wouldn't have to worry about money and could take it easy. I'll let you stay here just for 1 month. Find a place and move out by then. If you break this promise, I'll do to you what was done to me. I left them with those words and returned to the hotel. Afterwards, it seems my parents did all they could, and within a month, my sister and her husband found an apartment where the deposit and key money were significantly reduced. However, since they are unemployed, the place they could rent has shared baths and toilets, and the apartment itself is quite old. The couple argues daily about whose fault it is for ending up like this, but it's no longer any of my concern. Even my parents have lost all patience with my sister, pregnant or not, and have no intention of supporting her. Hopefully, this experience teaches my sister that she and her husband need to support their family by themselves. Later, I decided not to sell the house but to rent it out. I told my sister and her husband that it was sold, but I wasn't ready to sell it as it was still newly bought. I had bought the house thinking it would be a good real estate investment in the future. Therefore, it was easy to find a tenant, and now I'm earning rental income from it. Being able to distance myself from my sister and her husband while increasing my income is a relief. My parents and I are now living together in a downtown skyscraper. After this ordeal, my parents have no more expectations from my sister and her husband. It's unlikely we will have any further dealings with them. I intend to continue living my life, repaying my parents for all they've done, ensuring I never become an unreasonable person like my sister. It's unlikely that a good future awaits her, no matter what difficulties befall my sister and her husband in the future. We have no intention of helping them. They have chosen their path, and it's only right they face the consequences. I plan to continue leading a joyful life, always grateful to my parents,